Hello, and welcome to Sunny Days Podcast, the podcast for folks to start living their grooviest, most magical lives. I'm your host, Alex the Good Witch, a professional psychic, healer, speaker, and coach. I use my degree in biochemistry, experience as a mental health provider, and spiritual gifts to align your subconscious programming with your conscious desires, guiding you into your dream reality. Here, you will receive practical guidance, insight, and stories that you can apply to create your happiest, most fulfilling life today. If you're ready to feel lit up, capable, and inspired, I invite you to join me on this sunny day. Hello, and welcome to the Sunny Days Podcast. Today, we are going to talk about the accuracy of tarot readings. I get asked a lot, are tarot readings accurate? And my answer to that is, it depends. So today, I'm going to be breaking it down a little further for you so you can understand tarot readings a little bit more, both for yourself as someone who may be receiving readings and discerning what readers to get readings from, as well as you as a reader, whether this is you wanting to be a reader professionally or starting to be a reader professionally, or just you reading for yourself, maybe reading for friends.
Someone texted me in reference to
That was literally my own voice, and that was the scariest thing ever. My phone just like uploaded a video, so then I started talking. Sorry, that was super weird. Okay, so tarot readings and their accuracy. So first, I want to start off by just describing a little bit of tarot to get us a foundation of why are we even questioning the accuracy? What is there to question? Why is it for some people it seems accurate, maybe for other people it's not? Why do we get different experiences with the tarot? So tarot cards are cards that each have their own specific meaning. And each deck of tarot cards is the same deck of cards. I know that they look very different, and they are very different as far as connotation and energy goes. But ultimately, to be a tarot deck, it's all the same cards. Maybe the artist or writer is playing off of certain concepts of the cards. But at the end of the day, it's like a deck of playing cards where fundamentally it is the same cards within that deck. And then each card has their own meaning. And from there, those meanings can have different connotations depending on how the person making the deck is interpreting them, or wanting to have like a different angle or energy there. But they all have that basic core meaning. It really then just comes to connotation and things like that as far as the creative liberty goes, which is great because then we get a bunch of different like perspectives with different decks. But just so you know, fundamentally, it's all the same deck, just coming up in, different angles and different ways. So with these cards, like I mentioned, each card has their own definition, their own meaning. So that meaning is found in the book, right? And if you were first getting to learn tarot, you would like pick a card or flip a card over and you would go and look at the book and read that meaning. So this is the start of where potential inaccuracy starts to creep in from my perspective, from my experience as a reader and also someone who receives readings and just my knowledge of the tarot and psychic ability and things like that. So the reason this starts to creep in now is because when you have a tool and you are giving the tool all of the power, 100% of the power, then that tool isn't going to be working in its optimal usage. It's intended to be a tool, to not be the tool user, to not be the sole thing. It is a tool. So when we rely solely on this is the card, and then I open the book and this is the definition of that card, we're putting way too much, in my opinion, we're putting way too much power or leaning way too much on the tool. And we are not cultivating the skills that we need to be able to optimally use the tool. This is a co-creation with the tool. This is us working in synergy, not just me relying 100% on the tool. So it's very much like I grew up playing softball competitively, and some kids had better bats than others, and of course, it makes a difference. That's why they're engineered in that way. But at the end of the day, I forget what the exact saying was. By the end of the day, it's not the bat that makes the hitter or the player, right? Like at the end of the day, if you fundamentally are not hitting well, then like that's not really up to the bat. But the bat is a tool. Like if you can hit well, and you have those skills down, then if you were to upgrade your bat, like yes, it's going to be even better from there. But that's where it comes in as a tool. You're not like relying on the bat to be able to hit the ball well for you. You have to be the player first. So same with being the reader. Like you have to be the reader. At the end of the day, you're a reader who uses this tool. So in my opinion, inaccuracy does start to creep in when the reading is all just based off of the cards. And this is also where a lot of skeptics come from, right? A lot of skeptics will be like, I don't understand. They're just cards. You're just pulling cards. And yes, if that is the case, that's a good point, because honestly, the readings where it's just the cards and it's just pulling cards aren't super accurate and are more confusing and are more choppy. So yes, to their defense, but the thing is, it's the reader, it's the psychic, it's the person channeling, it's the intuitive that is channeling the message. And the cards are the tool to support that person and help them come to these messages and connect the dots and make them flow, give them this kind of structure and this space in order to have these messages come about. So in that way, it is accurate, and they aren't just cards anymore. Yeah, when they are just cards, maybe they're just cards, but they aren't. They aren't just cards when paired with the person reading it. It's more than just you and the cards. There is that energy that you are channeling. I'm using the word energy very loosely. It can be, a myriad of beings, of entity, of energy that you are channeling. But if it were just you as a human, like how would you know these things? I always say that my definition of psychic or intuition is being able to tap into information that's beyond the conscious and subconscious mind. So it's information beyond our human limitations of accessing information. So if it was just you as a human and these cards, I can understand the skepticism for sure. And on top of that, that is, part of the reason for inaccuracy. I know we're focusing on, why tarot readings may be inaccurate, or how could they be inaccurate, or inconsistent. Things are just showing up not the same as a very fluid, connected, clear reading. So if it was just you and the cards, that is very like one-dimensional. I guess literally like three-dimensional, but that is very one-dimensional. So there is, of course, what you are channeling, like what is coming through you, this information that is really beyond just you as a human. And that's really what makes it accurate. So let's talk about how it's really the energy, the information itself, and then you as a reader, aka the one channeling, that's what makes the reading accurate. And that is why you can read without the cards. And when I say you, I mean someone who is going to give really clear and accurate readings would hypothetically be able to practice and get to the point where they don't need the cards to read, or they could switch to other modalities. I definitely do not want to discredit anyone who relies on the tools for sure. But my point is that the the real impact, the real clarity that's coming through is beyond the tools. And the tools are just there to help. So when more of the focus, more of the impact is really coming from the energy, the information coming through itself, and like the person as they're channeling, being like a clear channel over, all of the pressure has to be on the cards and the tools. That's when you get really clear, really accurate readings. That's when they really come to life. They're not necessarily going to come to life if it's just you as a human reading cards and reading definitions. And this gets to where people actually come across inaccurate readings. So I'll give the example of you giving a reading to yourself, because I think that's where people see it the most. Of course, everyone has their own experiences with other readers and things like that. But I'm definitely not here to put any readers in any kind of light. So we'll just focus on, you giving a reading to yourself. Why does that sometimes come up as possibly inaccurate or confusing? That has to do with you as a human just reading the cards. So when you as a human just read the cards, it's going to be very choppy. So the way that I like to put it is that with this definition that you were reading from the card, yeah, that's the definition of the card. But then how does that actually end up relating to you? At the end of the day, that is like one definition that you're reading from a book where that definition comes from a very specific energy. And that energy can have a bunch of different connotations. Like how I was saying, different decks of cards have different connotations, right? Different like contexts, different angles and things like that. So it's really the energy of the card. That if you're reading that, or less reading it, but that's more what's coming to you, you're being directed to see and interpret, that's going to be a lot more clearer than just like straight up definition, especially when you get into a reading with like a spread and then you're just like definition, definition, definition. It's like very choppy and you're like, someone is going to steal my wallet. And then it's like I'm going to reconnect with someone I haven't seen in a couple years. And it's like, what? So I think that's where a lot of confusion comes in for beginners as well, is that choppiness. So when you read it, quote unquote, by the book, it's going to be very choppy. So you may be thinking like, well, then how do I not read it by the book? I definitely always suggest getting to know the cards in general, which would mean, like reading the book. Maybe you like watch readings on like YouTube and things like that, and you start getting familiar with the cards in various connotations. I think that's really helpful too, is learning, but not in like a memorizing way, just experiencing various connotations for the same card. And it's like all in your subconscious. That's going to really help. So getting familiar is a good word, getting familiar with the cards. But then once it comes to actually reading, it's really intuition based that's going to give you the accurate reading. So once it gets to the reading, your intuition is going to be able to guide you in what you're noticing about the cards, what connotation, what connotation of the energy of the card is coming up. And keep in mind that intuition, I defined it as information beyond your conscious and subconscious mind, which it totally is. So that's why it's going to give you information that you wouldn't normally be able to conceive or know. But on top of that, it includes your conscious and subconscious mind. So the more you get familiar with the cards and you're like absorbing, that information, you're absorbing like various ways to look at that energy, various like interpretations of the definition, even though you're not going to remember at the top of your head, it's not like you like memorized all these. You've learned it once, so it's in your subconscious. So when you're doing the reading, if you're being very intuitive about the reading, you'll be able to have that information just flow and come up, and you'll be able to, understand which connotation, that card is representing. And then even moreover, when you're connected to your intuition, you're going to be able to see the cards as more than just their definition. A lot of times when I read, it may not even be about the energy, the quote unquote definition of that card. That card may be there because intuitively I'm being shown like, ooh, look at the woman in the card, like she's turning away and like that means this, you know? So it's gonna be like so in the moment and so intuitive, or like, oh, look at the number of the card, look at that color of the flower. You know, it starts to end up not even necessarily being about the specific cards. And you can see how once you're in that flow state where things can, you can really just have your attention be pulled in the directions that you need to while receiving the messages that you need from it, that now paints a very fluid, clear picture rather than the choppiness of trying to interpret. This card means this, that card means this. What does this mean? That's all very interpreting. That's all very your conscious mind, and our conscious minds are amazing, but they're very limited. So as you can see, it's going to turn into choppy, you know, potentially even like inaccurate readings. And then this brings me to my next kind of point example is that I get asked a lot, hey, like I've given myself a reading for this, and then I gave myself a reading for this same thing shortly after, right? Like nothing changed, maybe even like an hour later, right? Like literally, like nothing has changed, and the cards are different. Well, why is that so? If tarot is accurate. And this again comes back to what I've been explaining, to where if you are focused more on the reader, on the channel, on the energy coming through, and like putting less of all of the pressure and the focus on the tool to do it for you, then you could still get the same exact reading with completely different cards showing up. 100%. You can have the same exact reading with different cards coming up. And the reason is because what's coming through, those messages coming through, what you're being directed to see and pull from each card is gonna be those same messages, the same messages that you need. So whether it was this card or that card, you're gonna receive the same message from them, because that message is the thing that you need. That message is the reading. So it's going to come up the way it needs to come about. And I've noticed that before too, like in readings where, you know, I'll have a card where at face value, it doesn't necessarily mean that thing that I'm saying, but it's because of the messages that are coming through and where I'm being directed to look and what I'm being directed to receive from that card. It may not be the meaning itself at face value. So really keep that in mind when you're doing readings. The importance is really you as the channel, allowing that energy and that intuition to come through, and that, you know, that doesn't fail. Whereas the cards, like, yeah, you're probably going to pick different cards for the same reading. And I think people think that, you know, because it's like magical, that you should magically be able to pick the exact same cards and the exact same spread. But a huge thing that I teach in general overall is that we are humans as well. We're humans as well in this human world. So just like statistically, you know, are you going to pick the same cards in the exact same spread? But you can get the exact same reading from that whole different spread. You can get the exact same messages from those from that reading. So this also plays a part, as well as just when I teach people tarot and I'm describing this to them, is knowing that I could pull the same card for you and the same card for somebody else, and it can mean completely different things. And that is why, because at the end of the day, it's really a psychic based reading or an intuitive based reading. And the tarot is the way to help represent all those different energies and evoke all those different emotions, and a tool to be pointed and guided in different directions, especially for those starting out. I think it's great for people starting out, as long as you really keep that in mind at the end of the day, that the focus is your development with your intuition and your psychic ability, and leaning on that and trusting the messages that come in and getting clearer on those messages, and how you receive them, rather than just the tarot itself. And I do completely respect and honor the tarot. And I know I didn't go a lot into the significance of it in this video, but I really just wanted to dispel that whole notion of inaccuracy, and not just dispel it. I'm not trying to like convince anyone who's skeptical. It's totally fine to be skeptical. That's not my job to convince at all. It's totally whatever. I don't mind. But for those who are like confused about it, especially, and for those who may love it and be interested in it and honor it, but then be like, I feel like I've, given myself inaccurate readings before. Like I have pulled, different cards for the same subject before. And like now I'm confused. What am I doing? What am I doing something wrong? To just be able to like clear all that up on my take on inaccuracy. It's really like more of a human error kind of thing because when you tap into the messages that are coming through, like the divine messages and the true divination, that's clear and that's accurate. So it's really just leaning too much, I'd say, on like the physical concept of definition, card, like interpretation with your mind. I think that that's when things start to get a little tricky and less clear. It's a little less clairvoyant. Clair means clear. But it gets a little less tied to the clairvoyant, clairaudient, whatever the clair is aspect. And then I do want to know as well that there is nothing wrong with looking at the book and looking at the definition. I know I've talked a lot in ways that seem like I discourage that. It's more just to paint a picture to you of what is most effective to focus on and to work on and to connect to. What is like the base? I'm really here from my perspective in this episode is really about the base, the foundation of everything being you and, the psychic realm, the intuitive realm, the divine realm, you in that relationship. And that really can facilitate the relationship with you and the cards. Because at the end of the day, they are divination tools. So divination is, of the utmost importance here in using them. But, as far as referring to the book, you can refer to the book. You totally can. I suggest doing it intuitively, right? So when I was first starting out, I would, read the cards and, allow kind of the messages to come through, like bubble up from the cards, come through my conscious. And then sometimes I would get really stuck on something. I get really, really stuck. And I learn instead of beating myself up over like, I don't know what it's saying or what this means, I'd be like, I'm stuck. This is my like sign. This is my nudge to open up the book. And then I would open up the book and there would be like a word or a phrase that would be perfect. It would be the thing of like that fill in the blank, that missing thing that I was stuck on. So when you open the book, I do recommend that one, you open it intuitively, where you go about the reading as much as you can intuitively from your own knowledge that's coming up, from your own messages that are, coming to you from the divine. And then when you get stuck or when you literally feel the call to open the book, that's when you open the book, because there's so much greatness in there. It's not that you can't open it. And then with that, too, once you have the book open, feel free to kind of do this like intuitive practice where you soften your gaze and you're really just like allowing the book, to come to your eyes rather than you straining like to read it, and to pick things apart and see like what comes to you. Like I mentioned with the cards, like, oh, like notice, the woman facing this way, notice that number, that color. It's kind of like what comes to you. I mentioned that usually it's like a word or a phrase for me, and that's the thing I need to fill in the blank. So I think that helps a lot in general. Of course, it's always up to unique context. But in general, I feel like it's more of that word or phrase that comes, and then it's like you can continue on with your role. You can continue on with that channeling. It's almost like an actor where like they get stuck and it's like line, and then they give them one word, and then it's like, okay, I can keep flowing from here. So with the book, I would typically, like I said, it's always unique, but just giving my own 2 cents here, I would allow it to be more of that facilitation and like opening it up and then like reading the whole thing. And again, having it be super like definition based. So I hope that's helpful. If you would like to continue to work on your connection with your intuition, your psychic ability, because like I said, I feel like working on that is really the thing that is going to be able to make accurate tarot readings rather than just solely putting all the pressure and everything on the card. So if you're wanting to tune back in and develop that within yourself more, I do have some offerings for you. So I have a class. It's like a very small mini class. It's just a couple of minutes. It's very easy and it's called Is That You Intuition? So that class goes into how to discern your intuition versus your thoughts, just like your regular thoughts or maybe your anxious thoughts and your fear based thoughts. How do you go about discerning them? Because ultimately, they both come to mind. So it's a matter of being able to, figure out the source of them and, understand what is your intuition versus what is not. So definitely check that out for that. And then if you want to go deeper into it, I have a masterclass class, and that is called Holy Shit, I'm Psychic. So that is a much deeper dive into psychic ability, developing your psychic ability, being able to understand where you're at in those developments, practices for you, and includes a Reiki hypnosis as well to just go really deeper into your own energetic body and start to tap in and feel what does it feel like exactly to receive the psychic messages and intuitive messages so that as you're receiving them that is exactly what's going on. So there is that Is That You Intuition. It's more like a mini class. And then there's Holy Shit, I'm Psychic. That is a master class. I'm gonna have them in the show notes so you can go check those out and further develop your skills. And that's all I have for you today. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope that this cleared some things up for you, gave you a better understanding of tarot. And yeah, go give yourself a reading if that's what you're listening for and that's what you're into. I am a tarot reader. Obviously, or else I wouldn't be speaking on the subject. I am a tarot reader. I give psychic readings. So definitely feel free to check out my services as well if you are in need of a reading from me. And other than that, I will see you in the next episode. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you for tuning in to the Sunny Days podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and catch more of my free content by following me at Alex the Good Witch on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. If this episode resonated with you, please take a screenshot, post it in your stories, and tag me on Instagram. I appreciate your time here with me today. Peace and love to you all, and I will see you in the next episode.